Lastly, in terms of flower construction, we want to look at flower symmetry. Now in the first picture, you'll notice a flower that if you basically take a line and draw a line through the center, you can make mirror images. But it's not just one line. You can do one line, two lines, three lines, four lines through the center of the flower as you're looking down on it, and have mirror images for every line that you draw. And all these lines that you draw through the flower appear to be rays coming out of the center, or rays off, out of the sun. So that is the case where the flower symmetry is radial. Rays, radial. And this other picture of a vetch, you see that the flower actually only has two sides, and only one line can be drawn through that flower to give you mirror images. So in that case, because there are just two sides of the flower, we call it bilateral symmetry. So there you have the basic aspects of construction. Parts free, locked parts fused, adjacent parts fused, ovary position, and floral symmetry. Now let's go on to inflorescences. Inflorescences are basically just the flower clusters, how they occur on the stem or branches of stems. So the first type of inflorescence we want to look at is spike and spike-like. In this case, the flowers are scattered along and attached to a single unbranched stem, which basically will be terminating the stem, or maybe terminating a major branch. But that'll be a separate flower cluster with only one main stem running through it with the flowers coming off. The flowers can be either stalked or unstalked. We call the stem that runs through that inflorescence the inflorescence axis. So now we've used the term axis several ways: inflorescence axis, floral axis, and leaf axis. Next are heads. Heads are clusters in which the flowers, either with or without flower stalks, form a tight ball-like cluster at the end of a stem or branch. So these flowers appear to come off the same point off the end of that stem or branch. So here you see this head of clover, and if we pull out a single flower, you see what the flower looks like. So you can realize that there are many, many flowers in that head, tightly bunched together, radiating from basically one single point. Next is the term umbel. This is an umbrella-like cluster with the flower stalks radiating from a single point, and often the supporting branches. In other words, there's the branches holding the flower stalks. There may be multiples of those, and those are also radiating from a single point on a larger branch to give you a very umbrella-looking structure. So in this case, the flowers will be stalked because they have to be radiating from the end of a little branch. Next is panicle. This is a branched tapering cluster with the oldest flowers and the oldest branches near the base of the cluster. So here you can see multiple branches. The oldest flowers are near the base of the main stalk and base of the side branches, and the oldest side branches are near the base as well. Corm. This is a branched but flattened cluster, not a tapering one. A flattened cluster with the oldest flowers on the outside. Now, similar to this is another flat branched cluster, but it is called a cyme because the oldest flowers are in the inside. So as you can see in this picture, the branch comes up, forms a flower at the end, and then as that flower is forming, two branches develop below the flower. And each of those then at the end of those have a flower forming, and below each of those flowers, again it branches and forms two more flowers. So you have the oldest in the center, then you have next oldest, and then the next oldest. So you get younger and younger flowers as you spread out from the center as the branching develops. You'll notice in this case, in this cyme, it appears to be balanced. You have the branching on both sides, and this repeats and repeats. However, there are other types of cymes which don't look flat and branched. They look like spikes. This is because you have a cyme in which it develops only on one side, and every time there's a branch that forms, only one flower develops on it. So you end up with what looks like the lowest flower on its flower stalk is actually the flower at the tip of the stem. And that flower stalk is not a flower stalk, it's actually the end of the stem. And the branch that develops below that flower then thickens and looks like the continuation of the main stem. So as you move up the stem, you're actually looking at younger and younger side branches that are all formed together to look like a terminal stem. But you'll notice that because the flowers are being actually produced on what are actually side branches, this, what appears to be the main stem, is actually going to coil because the branches are getting smaller and smaller, and they're always to one side. So you have this coiled structure with the successive branches developing. It's coiled and looks like a scorpion's tail. So therefore we call this a Scorpioid cyme, or you can just call it a one-sided cyme. So that gives you all of the main inflorescence types: spikes, heads, umbels, panicles, corums, cymes, and Scorpioid cymes.